start, as I travel around, because I'm interested in mission and heritage, and this year, just to read something from Wesley's journal about what he was doing, and this is in 1757, and we've got him here preaching. He's also earlier on he's dealing with somebody who's a bit depressed, and the day before he baptizes a young woman who's an Anabaptist. But today I preached at Leytonstone. Oh, what a house of God is here! Not only for decency and order, but for the life and power of religion. I'm afraid there are very few such to be found in all the king's dominions. So there's Leytonstone. They'd got good things going for them, hadn't they? And what about round here? Well, this is the chapter about the Darlaston circuit. And it's quite interesting, really. It was a man called Samson Turner, who was in the potteries. He was a Stoke-on-Trent man. And he was laid hands on and prayed for to come and mission to the sinners in the Black Country. And so it says about this man, it's quite interesting, really. It says he would be a missionary in the populous district we know as the Black Country. And in his journal, and then it says about some of them where he missioned in Brownhills and Walsall and different places, Wolverhampton. But it says, at Bilston he spoke amid quietness in a space in the centre of the town. But that night he was put into a small room in a common lodging house, along with tinkers, cadgers, and chimney sweeps. Now, the primitive Methodists were known for their ministry among the poor, the wretched, the ones who nobody else cared for. And this man Samson came, and there's his congregation. Some of the ragtag and bobtail of society. And, I mean, I mustn't really want to hear some things I've got to say, but I just find it very exciting. When at Wolverhampton, he took his stand in the marketplace. Before he got to the end of his discourse, he was hustled and howled at. Nor did the mob cease its unfriendly attentions as he made his way to the southwest end of the town with a gentleman who had rescued him from these persecutors and invited him to be his guest. They went along and the mob followed them, using abusive and menacing language. At Winelall, he was stormed out of the town. And I mustn't go on, but I mean, he met with opposition. And the point I want to just make about that is, because I am a sort of half-full person, and I am excited about the gospel and what God's doing, and I've seen some wonderful things in my life of the way that the Holy Spirit has worked. But I do want to say as well that there are people that I've met, there are situations I've been in, that have been really tough. I've never had a mob sort of hurling things at me, like poor Samson had there when he started off round here. But certainly I've met opposition with people. When I was a prison chaplain, there were some people there who were into black magic and witchcraft, and my word, they didn't like me at all. And it was. Sometimes I got a real headache after I'd been with some of the people there. So sometimes spiritually, you don't know where people are coming from. Mind you, one of them, he said to me, he put in a complaint, and when I went to see him, he said, "Never do it again." I said, "What? I don't know what I did." He said, "You do." He said, "I sneezed, and you said, 'Bless you.'" He said, "I had a terrible time after you did that." Well, there's the spiritual power. And Mark's gospel's wonderful. And when Jesus stills the storm, and then he goes and meets Legion, who's a real weird person, all among the graves. Everybody was frightened of him. They sort of tied him up, and then he broke himself free. And Jesus leaves with him totally changed. He wants to come with Jesus. And then you get him landing on the other side, and there's a bishop, really. I mean, Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. I mean, a man of great power, but a man in distress and great need. And this is a text I want you to... You'll have heard this before, many a sermon on it, I'm sure. But yes, in Mark 5:24, and Jesus went with him. He'd asked for Jesus to come because his daughter was so sick. And the way that Mark writes this, Jesus, I'll come with you. And in all this, we're not doing this on our own in sharing the good news, in living the good news. Jesus is with us. We're not by ourselves. So let's remember that. And let's remember too, I mean, that whole section of Mark's gospel is so exciting because of the way that Jesus is caring about the individuals and showing tenderness and compassion. And that's a very wonderful thing. Mind you, as a dad of 3 daughters, if one of my daughters was sick and I wanted Jesus to go and see her, and then Jesus suddenly stops and says, somebody touched me, and there's a big crowd, I'd think, all right, somebody's touched you, come on, let's get to my daughter. And instead, there's a whole section there, you know this story really well, where Jesus turns around and this lady comes to him. You know, who touched me? And we've got the chimney sweeps and the cadgers and so on with the early primitive Methodists. And you know, I've got a very interesting book at home written by an American doctor where he analyzes the sicknesses of the people in the healing miracles in the New Testament and in the Gospels. And this one, he says, it's still what women have today, so what older women have today. But in those days, it would have meant that she smelled. That would have been part of the... And think of that, you know, in your community, you know, keep away from her. She smells. This lady, she spent all her money on trying to get it right. And this story is also in Luke's gospel, because it says in Mark, she spent all her money on doctors trying to get... Now, Dr. Luke, interesting, isn't it? It's so human, the gospel, isn't it? He doesn't put that bit in, that she spent all her money on the doctors. He edits that bit out, you know, we don't... It's so human, isn't it? The New Testament is so human, it's wonderful. And to this smelly lady in the community, Jesus says to her, my daughter. My daughter. Oh, I've been on the phone to one of my daughters, you know, the love I have for my children. My daughter, it's a very precious thing to say, isn't it? My daughter. So whoever it is who you meet, who you're rubbing shoulders with, the love of Christ is so enormous, it's so great. So no matter how scruffy and smelly or whatever they are, to Jesus, they're his child. He loves them. And he loves you. And you've your story. Why are you here today? Where did it all start for you? How did it happen that you're here as a Christian this morning? Well, I'd like you now, just for a couple of minutes, to turn to the people next to you and just tell them, just very, very briefly, your story of how you happened to be here as a Christian this morning. Where did it all start? Just for a couple of minutes, please talk to each other. You've all been evangelists. You've all told your story of faith to someone else. That's the greatest sermon you can ever preach. That's the greatest story you can ever tell, is just how it happened. And it will have been every one of us will have been some unique way that God has dealt with us. But that's very special. And telling stories, it's key in living the good news. It really matters to be able to tell the story. Jesus was telling stories all the time, and then we still listen to them now and get loads out of them. But we've got our story, which is unique. So please, my anointing, and I'm your president this year, is as an evangelist. That's my anointing. And I was 12 when I became a Christian. I was 14 when I went on my first mission. and I'm 61 now, so I've been a long time. And when in Southport, I said at that conference, I'm now starting on mission. And I'm going to spend the whole year on mission. And that's just what I'm doing. And meeting with people and sharing and wanting to tell the story. Now, I was in the Lancashire district. I was at Chorley. And I was doing a messy church. And I haven't brought it with me. And there's some people here who are very cross that I haven't brought Clarence the frog, who's my puppet. I know, I'm sorry about that. Here he is naked. No. But I had the frog because I was seeing these boys and girls. But the whole theme was about St. Paul, and the particular section they were looking at was when he was imprisoned and when he was shipwrecked. And as hard as I might try, I couldn't think how I could link a frog to that story. Now, they've still got plenty of activities. I've got 3/4 of an hour. So in my collar and everything, I nipped out of the church, ran down to the main street in Chorley, and I was praying that I'd find a charity shop that had an action man. Because I thought, if I can get an action man, I can tell the story to the boys and girls, and the action man can be St. Paul. So age concern, I went in, there was nobody in the shop, the lady was behind the counter. I rummaged through the toys, and hallelujah, 80 pence. So I laid him on the counter, and this lady looked at me and looked at this. And she said, I won't ask. I said, oh, you can ask, you can ask. I said, because in the Sunday school around the corner, we've got Messy Church, and they're doing St. Paul being in prison and being shipwrecked, and he's going to be St. Paul. I'll dress him up, but he's going to be St. Paul. And she said, now, wait a minute, I went to Sunday school, I studied religion at school and things, and I remember reading about St. Paul. I don't think he was ever in prison and shipwrecked. I said, I'll tell you, love, it's in the Acts of the Apostles, and it is all there. And then I started to tell her. And there was nobody else in the shop. Now, while I talked to her, I said, well, St. Paul was imprisoned, and as I was saying all the story, she didn't fidget with anything. She was totally engaged on what I was saying and about the shipwreck and about how Paul called everybody together and said, get something to eat, and they were all saved. And, of course, that's a great image for the church. And all this I said, telling the story, and she listened to all of it. Now, I'd like to say that then I prayed with her, but I didn't, because a load of people came in the shop, and when they saw me with a naked action man, I thought I better make a quick escape. But the point is that we have a great story to tell, and we can think that those people around us, other people here and there, they're not a bit interested in what we have to say. But that's wrong. You see, and she said, you know, I didn't remember that. I didn't know about that. And there's lots of people like that. So how can we be the good news? How can we tell our story? Well, John Wesley got on his horse and came round here. And it's remarkable, isn't it, when you read in his journal like these things, all the different ways that the Spirit was moving. And we think of it being huge crowds, which there were to listen to him, but the Methodist people, the Methodist societies generally were small and intimate, and people really cared for each other. And in our churches today, oh, please, may we be places that show care and love for each other and for those who come among us. Now, this is a Mustang, a sports car. Yeah, I do get them wrong. I'm not good on car names, unless it's a Ford or a Citroen. I can't remember these ones. But this was used a couple of weeks ago by the BBC television in Cornwall when they filmed me for a programme about John Wesley and about Methodism in Cornwall. And because they couldn't, well, health and safety wouldn't let me ride a horse. Instead, they hired this flashy sports car, which is amazing. And I was in it with Gemma, and she's the presenter on this television program. And so we were I was with them 7 hours altogether. I spent a lot of time with Gemma listening to her, because you're not filming all the time, and she was talking to me, and that was great. And at the end of the time, I gave her a little cross, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment, and said a blessing for her. But we drove up right from St Ives, so you know St Ives, right the way down the coastal road to St Just, to the square there, where we parked, got out, and we went to a pub for a lunch. We had our lunch, got back in this sports car, and went back down Chapel Street to the very large Methodist church in St Just. It seats 1,500, does the Methodist church there. And we got out of the car, and there were two workmen with high visibility jackets on, and one of them did this and beckoned over, so I got my cross in my hand straight away. What did he want to ask me? And so he said, it's true what my friend's just said to me. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he came back from having bought his pasty for his lunch and said, I can't believe what I've just seen. In the square up there, this Mustang sports car drove right up and parked. And it was a lovely car, and out of it got a vicar. And I just stared. And to my amazement, out of the other side came this beautiful blonde girl. He said, and my friend said, do you know what? We're in the wrong job. So I said to him, oh, well, there's plenty of vacancies if you're interested. But it's not just about applying for a job. It's a calling. It's about the cross. Now, a dear retired carpenter in Devon, whose wife I met, he said he was feeling that God couldn't use him anymore. That he's elderly, but he just can't do what he used to do. But he makes little crosses. And I said to his wife, when I saw one of these that she had, I said, I wonder if he'd make some for me, please, because I'd love to use this in my one-to-one evangelism. And she said, I'm sure he'd be delighted, Steve, if you would like him to. I said, yeah, I'll pay him if he'll make them. Now, this particular batch I've got are apparently made out of 2 old hymn boards. And he gets wood from Methodist churches and saws them up and makes these little crosses. These crosses are such a means of grace. Well, it's what we're about. I mean, this is the heart of the gospel. This just speaks of the love of Christ. There's respect for the cross, even in our secular society today. Apparently, in tattoo parlours all over England, one of the most popular images for people to have on their body is the cross. Now, why is that? Because even in a secular age, this cross says something. It says something. And of course it does. We know that. And we know what St. Paul says, that it's a stumbling block to the Jews. But to us, it's the power of God. Now, because I'm the personality that I am, so let me just mark that up. Because I wear a uniform, and I've got my, I haven't put it on yet. I'll put it on after my Cliff College cross that I wear in here sometimes. People do want to talk to me. Or, in a sense, I give them space where I'm prepared to listen. Listening is a really important part of evangelism. We think of the evangelist as always having lots to say. Just read Pilgrim's Progress. Look at the evangelist in Pilgrim's Progress, and you see someone who doesn't say a lot, actually, to Pilgrim. But when the evangelist says something, it's really powerful. Listening matters. And actually, we live in a society now where people don't listen so much. They're too busy. They've got earphones in and they've got music. You know, listening is an important part of gospel work. And I said to you earlier about, well, you talked to each other and told your story. Let me emphasize and underline again, that's really important, is your story. I've had pastoral ministry, and I've always encouraged my people to tell their story. Of course, some people don't need much encouragement. And there was one lady in one of my churches who was always telling her story. Mind, it was an alarming story. And her hands were sort of twisted in, and you could see that her skin was sort of brown here, all round here. When she was a tiny baby, her father came home drunk and threw her on the fire. And her testimony from that was how she now has Jesus, her loving Father. It was a lot more than that. Now, in my local churches, I've always encouraged my people for us to work together in evangelism and mission so that, for example, when we have a baptism, let's not treat it as, so who are these coming in our church? Let's really make it a party. Let's really celebrate this family and celebrate the gift of new life with this baby. And this particular couple, I did baptism training with them, and they were ripe for becoming Christians. Absolutely ripe. They came to the church before the baptism just to sort of check us all out, see what it was like. They were really, and I was sure I'd got the service never lasted a full hour, and my message was only about 8 minutes, but it was packed with it, and I'd prayed for it, and I really wanted this couple to come to Christ because I'm an evangelist. So we had the baptism, I preached my message, then there was cake and tea afterwards, and I was thrilled with all the people I was meeting. And one of the stewards tapped me on the shoulder and said, Steve, look, and this couple were literally cornered by this dear lady, and he said, quick, rescue them. So I head over there to them, but when I got to them, both of them had tears coming down their face. Steve Wilde's sermon, that wasn't the way the Holy Spirit wanted to use. He wanted to use one of my people to tell their story, for them two people to come to faith. They still sent me a Christmas card. All of us can be used in sharing the good news of the gospel. It's not just for somebody like me. Let me say something, please, here, about theology here, doctrine, about prevenient grace. What's prevenient grace? Well, we know in Methodism, where's the font? I've seen it somewhere. Yeah. It's at the back. Oh, yes, there it is. I knew I'd seen it somewhere. When we baptize an infant, we're living out prevenient grace as a Methodist congregation because we're saying them promises, the parents are saying them promises, because of Christ going before us, because we're saying this is what it means to us, and we believe that prevenient grace, Christ is ahead of this child, and in their life journey will be there for them to respond for themselves. But we're saying here, and we know that, we know about that. But in evangelism, prevenient grace is really exciting, because meeting someone who isn't a Christian doesn't mean that God hasn't been involved in their life, and Christ is going before us. Well, on a train, it's all train journeys, because I've driven here, actually, but that's only because I had to rush from the minister's synod to get to the meeting. But I'm usually on the train or on a plane or something. And I was on this train early in the morning from Truro, and a young lad in that bit where the lavatories are, between the carriages on the train, was stood with a can of cider. And he said, it doesn't work right, because it's one of these Virgin ones where you have to press buttons and stuff, and the door only shut halfway, and it was right, you had to pull it. He helped me, it was really good, and I'm in my collar, and I got inside. He said, I'll stand outside, you're all right, Vicar, I'll protect you, and I'm sorry. So I said a prayer, because I wanted to talk with him about why he'd got a can of cider that time in the morning. So when I came out, we got talking just in that in-between bit. And again, he opened up. He's unemployed. Everything, he's in financial problems, no end. And once you get in that place, he was telling me how hard it is, because everything's more expensive and you haven't got the money in the first place. And he told me all about that stuff. And then he told me about the girl who he's met, who he really loves, and she's walked out on him. She doesn't love him anymore. And he told me that. He told me she's pregnant and she just had the baby in Exeter and it's in a little incubator because it's not so well. So there was lots of things that he wanted to share with just another person who was prepared to listen. He told me his stories. And this might sound a bit crass to you. It might sound a bit pathetic, what I said to him. But I said to him, I'll pray for you. And that's important. But I wish I could really help you, but I can't. But I know who can. Because Jesus can help you and be with you in all this stuff that you're in at the moment. He can be by your side to help you. It's not a magic wand, but he can be with you. And this was his response. He said, well, I want a load of that. That was his response. I need Christ. He took the cross and I prayed for him. But when we pulled into Exeter, he came in the carriage and he shouts out, thanks again, Vic. God bless. He said, and got out. That was amazing, wasn't it? Do you know, this is really interesting, isn't it? When I was in that carriage, I was on my own at the table. Now, if you travel on a train, it's hard to get a table just for yourself because people always want us on table. So I'll give you a hint here, okay? If you want to be on a train on the table, all you got to do is just put the Bible on the table, wear a dog collar, and nobody bothers. Standing room only, you've got it to yourself. Well, this lady got on the train, and she was struggling with her bags. I saw her, so I just went and helped her with her bags. And she came and sat right next to me. Now, at this point, I was on my computer, typing away desperately to do an article for the Methodist Recorder, which is a good read, by the way. Please buy one, because otherwise we're going to not have it. But anyway, that's another story. I'm doing the article, and do you know, I'd not got a Bible with me. And my phone has a Bible on it, and it wouldn't work. Sometimes it's like that. These phones and things, I tried it desperately I went through all the little bits. I've got that many here it is, my phone. I've got to show you my phone for this story. And so it wasn't there, and I rang a local preacher in Cornwall. John, carriage is quiet, nobody's talking. John, can you help me, please? I'm on a train, and I've not got a Bible, and I need one. And at that moment, Wendy pulls that white Bible out of her handbag. There it is. I couldn't believe it. And she said, I said, John, it's all right. I've got one now. And the man across said, that's divine intervention, that is. I thought it's a miracle. So I said to her, I'm amazing. She said, do you know, I came down here on Friday because I'm not religious, with my mother's ashes. On Saturday morning, we buried them in the churchyard, and the vicar invited me to the service on Sunday in the church. And I thought, I've nothing else to do, I'll go. She said, and it was Messy Church. Have you ever heard of it? Well, she had recorded the Messy Church, because she said, I loved it. She'd recorded all these children with puppets doing a Jesus song that was a recorded song. And so she played it. Now, this was all the carriage of people. It was really loud. And she's playing this Jesus song with all these children with puppets. And I swear by the end of it, as I looked at the carriage, they were all sort of doing this. It was amazing. It was amazing. She said, and when I went home, when I went back to the digs, I thought, you know, I've got to take God seriously. That's one of my themes. I've got to take God seriously, she said. And so she said, I thought, I haven't ever read the Bible. I haven't got a Bible. I'll buy one tomorrow. So on the way to the station, she said, I went in W.H. Smith and I bought this Bible. It's actually an unsuitable Bible to buy, really, because it's the authorized version, very small print. And it's for a bride, really, but there we are. It was useful for me. I could find what I wanted in it. She said, on the platform, I started reading it. She said, I thought, do I start at Genesis? Or she said, I decided to read in Luke and start at Luke's Gospel. And in fact, a train ticket was there in Luke's Gospel. And she said, I've done all this, and now I've met you. She said, it makes you believe in God, doesn't it? And so I listened some more, and I started to explain to her about faith. I got my cross out ready. And all of a sudden, from down the carriage, an elderly lady came and walked down to us at the table. And she said, excuse me, I can hear what you're saying, and I'm a Methodist. And I just want to say to you, love, I know who he is, and it's all true what he's telling you. And she went back to her seat. Amazing. So I gave Wendy a cross and prayed with her and got off and then desperately tried to finish the article for the Methodist Recorder. Now, I mean, I'm telling you stories here where you could say it's easy. And incidentally, Wendy, I did encourage her to go to the nearest local church, whatever sort it was, to go to that church, because I said, you'll find people there who will care for you and show love to you. She found a parish church where they've enveloped her. And she goes to the Wednesday communion. She goes every Sunday. At Christmas, she emails me, you see. She was on the cake stall for the Christmas bazaar. You know, they've really welcomed her in. Another of my journeys, I pull into Birmingham New Street, and the platform is full of blokes. I hadn't had much success, really, in listening and talking to people before that. But it's full of fellas, because it's Birmingham City against Derby. Oh, wow, Lord, please, help me with this. So they pile on. And I'm sat at this table here. Nobody sat with me. But the table opposite me is all these guys. And the air was blue. And then suddenly one said, oh, there's a priest. And so they all apologized straight away, you see. And then one of them said, hey, that's good luck for us. We'll win now because of him. I've come from Cornwall, but I'm not a Cornish pixie, you know. I said, hang on, Christianity isn't a good luck charm. So I started a discussion with these guys. Well, a discussion, my word. They had a go at me. This was an uncomfortable place for me to be. Two of them were UKIP. And the racism, I'm not used to hearing anybody talking like that. I'm with lovely people like you all the time. I'm protected. You're not, but I am. I'm protected. The things they were saying, it was just awful. And there was a Jeremy Corbyn Labour guy, and I must say, he said, you know, he was joined with me a bit on that. And there was another lad who I didn't know where he was from, but all of them, I felt, you know, that when you see a pig on a spit over a fire bit, and I just felt like that. And I felt totally inadequate. I felt uncomfortable. My stomach was doing somersaults because I just didn't feel I was answering them right. I'm the evangelist. I wanted to bring them to Christ. And here I was, just as I was answering one, wham, another one came in with something else. It was really difficult. And I did say, look, you are coming from a place of hate. I come from a place of love. Another point, I said to them, you know, God loves you. Ah, dear. I mean, they weren't having any of it. And I didn't feel I was a really good ambassador. In fact, I remember just thinking as we're coming into Derby, this is one story that I'll not be telling to crowds of people like you, because I'm just not very good in this situation. And as we pulled into Derby Station, I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I said to them, would you mind if I took a selfie? Now, I'm the king of selfies, you see. I'm always doing it. Expecting abuse. Instead, they said, oh, yeah, right. Oh yeah. And there they are, see? And did the selfie. And the lad on this side, he said to me, that's not fair, really, Steve, because there's only half of my face on it. Can I have one with you, please? Yes. And then, this amazed me. He turned to me, and he put his arms around me, and he hugged me. I was completely stunned. So I just put my hand on the back of his head and blessed him. And this is, remember, we've not stopped yet, we've almost stopped. And all his mates, all these football fans, cans of lager, everything, they're all there. And he hugged me. And then, when we moved, the other three, each one hugged me. My flabber was gasted, you know. And the last one was the one who said his mum had died just before Christmas. So I said, so here's the moment. You know, I got the selfie. I whipped the cross out. And I said to him, you know, I'd like to give you this because I think this would help you through your grief. I think that to have this cross. He looked me right in the eyes. And he said to me, I'm sorry, but no, I can't take that from you. for my own integrity, I can't accept that cross. But thank you for offering it. Thank you. So I felt right puzzled then. They all got off. In fact, the four of them stood by the window and they all waved goodbye to me. And I was, for a while, I just had to think about this. Well, I've come to a few conclusions, really. One is that whatever it is, if I don't understand it, nor do all of us, but there's something there about the power of Christ's love. There's something there that amidst all the horrible, bad stuff, in the end, love wins. The cross says to us, love, victory. And that he didn't accept it. He could have just said thank you and put it in the litter bin on the station platform. But instead, he thought of not taking it. And as somebody said to me the other night, just because he didn't take the wooden cross doesn't mean to say he didn't take the cross. In what we're seeking to do in evangelism is just help someone to move further towards the cross, further to accepting the love of Christ. Billy Graham organisation, they analysed many years ago now, but it still stands, Billy Graham converts, and it was something like this, that each person, when it was all analysed, had, in a sense, taken 32 steps, 32 stages in their life to come to the point where they said that they wanted to accept Jesus. Now, in a way, as local Christians, as local churches, in what we are doing, if we can help people to move a step, then we're doing good work in evangelism. Like I said about those baptisms, when they used to make the cakes and everything, we gave people a good experience of the gospel. And that's helping a group of people to make another step. So in your local church, what are you doing for mission and evangelism to be helping people to making that step for Jesus, to come to know him? And we have a lot of energy in Methodism. I'm traveling around, the good news stories I've got about Methodism, I've loads of them. Because there's such amazing things happening. And we can look on the negative side, and yeah, there's some bad stuff too. But there's more good stuff. God's not given up on the Methodist people, not by any means. And I'm challenging churches to put on your agenda mission as the first thing that you do. And I know, I've been minister, I know what it's like for church councils, and there's trouble with the gents' lavatories or whatever. We know all that stuff, and we can spend hours on it. Actually, why not surprise yourselves and just put all the energy of the meeting into looking at mission in your community and what you can do. I met one of the ministers, Zimbabwean lady ministers, I've been to her church, rural churches, she came to a thing. She was telling me, one of her rural churches, there's only 7 of them, and she said they've decided they're going to pray for every street, every house around nearby. And they're being positive about inviting people to come to church. Well, that's a great move. And one of my daughters has a poster that says, the main thing is that the main thing is the main thing. And this is the main thing. And the other stuff, I'm not saying it's unimportant, but I am saying, can we direct our energy into something else? I don't know what it is, because it's your community. Certainly, I challenged the conference with that, and I said to our people, try to win one person for faith this year. And the first lot that were off the blocks was a church in Bristol. 9 elderly people. And they heard my address. They had a prayer meeting. And the next day, I won't go into it all, but a lady met a woman in the post office. And at the communion service, she gave her life to Christ. And the last Sunday in August, she was actually made a member of the church. And I wrote to them. I was so excited about this. And they said, yes, now we are 10, and we're praying for 11. Join us. One person. In Rugby, where I was a few weeks ago, I did a membership service of 2 young men in their 20s, West Indian young men. And that church had said, what are we doing with all these people just on the fringes of the church? let's work out how we can draw them in. And those boys, all their mates came to that service. It was a great time. And when I offered the cross, 6 people took the cross at the end. It's an amazing time. Through the witness of those 2. Through the church council saying, what are we going to do? God can do it. Let's see where we're diverting our energies, and let's put some energy into spreading the good news of the gospel.